Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. I was thinking about that. I can't remember who made that commercial. The Want to Get Away? That was me this morning. I'm walking up to the building and it's windy and it's cold. It went from being ugly but fine to this. I don't welcome this. I'm getting old. I'm getting real old. I'm like in snowbird mentality already. I see the vision. And I'm staring down a full season of Toronto Maple Leafs hockey. And what we watched last night, and the combination of those two things, I would like a hot holiday. I would like to leave. This is essentially notice from my bosses that I need to take vacation. I can't do this. Who wants to do this? Who's excited about watching a season of Toronto Maple Leafs hockey right now? Oh, the negative media. I can already hear some of you. It's 16 games into the season. Boo-hoo. Shut up. It's awful right now. What are you supposed to be excited about? Genuinely. Like, you try to be patient. There's been a couple of good moments. I thought that maybe they turned a corner to that third period against Pittsburgh, and then they played a solid game against the Mammoth, and then boy, oh boy, since then, it's been a tire fire. And you get the head coach saying this, quote, "We don't value the defensive side of the puck enough," end quote. Yeah, that's pretty clear. What'd they get outshot? 22-2 in the third period last night. I would say you don't value a lot of things as a team, to be honest. You had a rookie goalie in net. I know he's played in the NHL before, but he's a rookie, okay? It's a young kid trying to find his confidence in the league. I would say my impression of him is how the hell did Caden Primo get any starts over this kid who was at least credible, stopped a million breakaways? McKee texted me last night, that has to be a record for breakaways in a period. I went, this feels like a bygone era type of thing. This feels like you don't see that in the modern game, is that many breakaways for a team, and the Leafs are giving them up. The rush chances are way up this season. They can't defend in their own end. They don't have a single guy who can make a breakout pass. Who's the defenseman that you feel like most confident when the puck is on his stick right now? Cue the Jeopardy music. I don't know. Everyone's picking their own like little villain in all of this. I've seen it be, well, it's Brendan Carlo. Yeah, that trade does not look good right now. Flat out. It's bad. He and Morgan Riley are not working out. There's a reason why they're shuffling him around. And honestly, that's a tough look for Tree Living because you moved quite a bit of asset capital to acquire a guy who essentially was supposed to be a partner for Morgan Riley, and they ain't working. They ain't working. But a lot of this has to be put on Morgan Riley, too. How many times have we done like, hey, they got to go out and get a guy to play with the guy who makes a lot of money and for some whatever reason, like cannot be moved, cannot be talked about moving, will not waive his no move. It's not like they're putting Morgan Riley with somebody else and I'm going, whew, now he's looking good. Now he's back to looking exactly like Morgan Riley. They don't defend well as a team. Like these odd man rushes and these breakaway attempts, these are not just purely on the defenseman. This is not a defensive issue from a purely blue line standpoint. Their depth is atrocious. Like, if it's me, what you've seen the last two games from Philippe Myers is enough to say, never again. That's how bad it is. That's how bad he's playing right now, that in a group of guys all playing bad, he's standing out as notably bad. Simon Benoit, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. So, yeah, it's not good. It is not good. I tweeted this last night, but they're so bad, John Tavares is giving quotes. I like Tavares a lot. He's playing great. But he said, quote, "Our game, for whatever reason, just becomes really immature. We don't manage the game very well," end quote. Here's the thing. I know he's not the captain anymore. but he is still absolutely part of the leadership structure of this team. And those guys got to be getting in a room and having some chats. Those guys have to have some serious conversations because I've seen everything from it's the systems, it's Benoit, it's Carlo, it's the forward depth is not. It's all of it. It's all of it. That's the scary part. If there was one little thing or one main thing that you could take from this and go, well, it's because this is happening as to what you're seeing on the ice right now, then there would be really no reason to be doing a segment like this, where it's this harsh of a critique, where it's this serious of a conversation about where this team is going. Because, yeah, there's a lot of parity in the league, and I do think that the Leafs have enough talent to carry them through some stretches. I'm encouraged by the fact that Wool will come back, but you could have put Prime Hasek in net last night. I don't know if the Leafs are, like, I don't know how much he's doing. 22 shots to 2 in a third period. Like, even it had there was a small part of me last night, I'll just admit it, that I wasn't upset that they lost that game. I went, good. They shouldn't get away with that. They should not get away with that. That should have to be, they already had one of those against Pittsburgh where they got away with 2 horrible periods of play. They had the awesome comeback in the third, and they went, we're focusing on the first 2 periods and not the last period. I went, good. That's a sign of maturity. And I will give Matthews credit for this. I've been watching his post-game media availabilities, and I do think that he's acting pretty transparent and seems to have a grasp on what is going on here. And he gets criticized for that. Like, you know, people see a quote from Tavares go out there, and the response is always like, where's Matthews? And you go, well, he's there too. You're just seeing the quote from the one guy right now. For the love of God. There's plenty of room for critique, but that's a weird one. I don't think that they look anywhere near a contender right now. And that's supposed to be the goal of this season. They're supposed to be in a contender window. And yeah, I think Mitch Marner did a lot for them defensively last year. Of course, going from Chris Tanev to Philippe Myers is a pretty notable drop-off when we're doing the whole conversation about how it's the same team. No, it's not. Those are 2 of the most important players, and they've been missing one of their most important goaltenders. So let's not just do that whole bit. Let's be genuine in this. But I don't know how you're supposed to look at this right now and feel as though they are anywhere close, or as though there is some kind of a solution to this that is plain and obvious. It's bad. Anyway, I enjoyed football yesterday. I lost every single bet. I got murdered, but I enjoyed the actual football. I will say this. I think that we all have a pretty clear idea as to who the best teams are at this point, right? And Seattle had another good showing. The Rams were nasty. The Rams just did whatever they wanted to the Niners yesterday. They had Stafford doing shoulder shakes and openly mocking the 49ers for trying to stop it. It just, whatever they wanted to do, it was readily available to them. Tonight's an interesting game because I think the Packers can get up to just about anybody's level, but they can also sink down to anybody's level. Like, they feel like they have the widest variation of play amongst the pseudo contenders. But to me, it's Seahawks, Rams, Eagles in some order in the NFC, with the Packers on the outside looking in on that conversation. I'm done with the Buccaneers thing. I don't care about them getting healthier. I'm over it. But the AFC, who's good? Who is good? Because there's enough evidence now with the Bills where I'm concerned. Nice win against the Chiefs, for sure. That matters the most, but feels like they could lose to anybody. Something's off. The Ravens won, but it also doesn't feel the way that I think it's supposed to this year. Who's good? The Chiefs are 5-4. The Chargers won. Okay, they beat that Steelers team that's hovering around the playoffs too. And boy, oh boy, that Steelers, that was That was like a, hey, your season's not going anywhere loss. That's how bad that one was. I don't know what to make of it. Brady Quinn is our Monday morning insider. He is a former NFL quarterback, and of course, a Fox. He joins me now. What's up, brother? How are we doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm trying to make sense of the results and what we saw yesterday too. I would say this. I mean, are you still not buying the Colts?
First of all, I was the one who bought the Colts from the beginning. We've been gone forever because of the Blue Jays run, and we just couldn't. It was like, I felt so bad. I'm like telling the guys, hey, we got to tell Brady that there's no way that we're doing it this week. The Blue Jays won another playoff series. The Blue Jays are the only thing in town. And the main thing that was killing me throughout all of this was that we were watching the Colts, and I called it from the start. I was like, hey, man, look out. This Colts team kind of interesting to me. And then right before we're supposed to come back next week or last week, the Colts suffered their most demoralizing loss with the Daniel Jones situation where he fully went Daniel Jones. And I went, oh, my God, of course. Maybe cancel Brady for the rest of the season because this is the way it's going. I kind of buy the Colts, but win 3 playoff games, win multiple playoff games, Colts. I don't know if I'm there yet. But to be fair, like, I don't know if I'm there with anybody. I'm just kind of doing the default thing of like, well, I guess the Chiefs will win.
Yeah, I think you kind of buy into the fact of, all right, whoever gets in the playoffs, we've seen it before with whoever their quarterback is. So we trust Patrick Mahomes. We trust Andy Reid to get in the playoffs and then make a run. And I'm kind of in a similar spot where you're not as concerned at this point in time in the season because of their track record so far. But for a team like the Bills, who was one of the hottest teams coming into the season, you go back to this past week and just say, like, similar to the Packers, you just mentioned it. They play up to their opponents. They can play down to their opponents. And maybe you can chalk this up to a divisional opponent where there's a lot of familiarity. And you've got a team that's got some guys who obviously still have talent and ability, and a coach who doesn't want to let go, doesn't want to get fired, even though if that may be sitting there for him at the end of the season. Regardless, the Bills have some scars. That when we look at this team, we evaluate, can they really stand up to the Chiefs? Can they really stand up to teams that are probably going to have to run the football when you get into that time of the year in the playoffs and it's inclement weather? Are they going to be able to stop the run? Because you couldn't stop Devon Achane. I mean, that was very clear based on yesterday's game. And the offense at times goes dormant. And it's hard to put a finger on what exactly that is and why there isn't more consistency there. So I'm kind of with you in regards to the AFC. I'm not sure if that's because there's more parity or if it's just because we've got some teams that at this point in the season are still trying to kind of figure out their identity. I think the only team that really has figured that out is the Indianapolis Colts. As long as Jonathan Taylor's running the football the way he does, it doesn't put the weight of the world on Daniel Jones' shoulder, and their defense is good enough, especially with the addition of Sauce Gardner now to help out in coverage. They're good enough to be able to beat some of those better teams. I just think it comes down to, like, is this like a Tennessee Titans type Colts team where you trust them to get into the playoffs now, but once they get into the playoffs, do you trust Daniel Jones to be able to take you and beat some of those guys head to head? Because those Titans teams with Ryan Tannehill, it was really largely defensive and a ground attack. He didn't do a ton in the playoffs, made some throws when he had to, but that feels like kind of what this Colts team may be.
Man, that's actually like the perfect comparison, just because I'm thinking, okay, you have Jonathan Taylor playing the Derrick Henry role, but also who's a better comp for Ryan Tannehill than Daniel Jones? Like, failed starter who had pedigree, but is an athlete and gets into a decent system with a good head coach and starts to look competent. But then when asked on the big stage to win against the best quarterbacks in the league, it becomes a bit of a taller task. I do want to get into the other team that I think had the best signature win of the weekend from the AFC and get into that group. But before I do that, I just want to finish with the Bills' thought here, because I thought their loss was super demoralizing, just the way that the fact that the door was just kind of open there throughout a lot of the game, and they kept coming up short. When you said something there about the offense and how at times it goes dormant. To me, the issue is fairly clear. James Cook is the best running back, and he's playing the best out of anybody that they've had throughout the Josh Allen era. When they're running the football effectively, they do feel like they have an identity. It's run it down your throats. You've got dual threat with the quarterback and with the running back. It's something that when we've talked about the Chiefs, that they don't have in their arsenal, right? Like a running back that they can lean on to pick up significant yardage consistently. But when that goes away, when you don't have that and they have to rely on just the passing attack, it doesn't feel the same way with Josh Allen putting the Superman cape on. And I wonder if there's a little bit of exhaustion from his standpoint of looking at the weapons that he has on go-to plays, right? Like they have that third down that gets intercepted in the end zone. Who does he go to? Dalton Kincaid on a jump ball. Keon Coleman has done essentially nothing for them outside of some garbage time work and the odd nice catch. But overall, I would not consider him the go-to guy that they drafted him to be. And yeah, Shakir is a nice piece, but he's like supposed to be just a good piece in a good offense, a number 3, a guy that picks up a few clutch first downs, good route runner, but not, hey, who are you going to when you got to have it? They're throwing it to a variety of guys, and I don't think that any of them are that dude.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think, since Stephon Diggs has left, they've been trying to figure out who's going to emerge in that spot. And that's unfortunately has not been Keon Coleman, as you point out. He was drafted to be, he hasn't developed to be that yet. And I'm not quite sure, they should have looked at trying to make a move to grab a guy like Garrett Wilson, for example, within the division. Probably one of the reasons why it wasn't going to work out. But, he'd be a player that I'd say, like, let's let Garrett Wilson and, Josh Allen play the rest of their careers together. He's a guy that's been through so much with the New York Jets, and it doesn't feel like he really has complained, all things considered. But I digress. You go back to last season, you look at the success of the Eagles with Saquon Barkley, and we kind of went through a period of like 2 or 3 years where the running back position's like been devalued. And I think if there's anything that has been proven now, and the Colts are probably an example of that, is like the running back now is becoming more and more valued again in regards to what you're saying. Most of these teams can't consistently throw the football either because of the shell coverage and the various looks that defenses are giving them now, or they just don't have that matchup, that one-on-one guy who's going to be able to consistently get open and separate. And so if you don't have the balance, if you don't have the ability to run the football, you're putting your team in a tough spot, especially your offensive line. So I look at it now and think like, yeah, if we're basing like who the best teams are in the NFL, for the most part, I think we'd all agree, like they could still run the rock down, Seattle and, the Rams are probably 2 teams who look at and say, well, they're pretty prolific right now, but when they need to run the football, they can.
They have it.
So I kind of look at this team now and just say, I don't know why that they haven't hung their hat on that. I don't know if that's like a Joe Brady issue. I'm not sure if it's something that they just don't feel like they can consistently do it well, or maybe it's because Josh Allen's their quarterback and they feel like if he's our quarterback, very similar to the Chiefs, like we're going to resist running the football at all costs until we absolutely have to. But to your point, like James Cook's the most dynamic player outside of Josh Allen on that offense. And so you got to highlight him in as many ways as possible, and hand the football off to him 15 times a game is not a bad strategy.
The teams that I like the most right now, it's they make you feel like you're off balance. And the Rams did that perfectly yesterday, where it was just, Kyron Williams or Blake Corum, these guys are just gashing you for 6-7 yards every single time they're touching the football. And then it's the play action, and all of a sudden it's down the field. I thought that was kind of the case with the Buccaneers, and maybe they get back to that when they get healthy with Bucky Irving. I don't know if he's like one of the most important players in the NFL, but it feels like they've lost that. I do like the way that the Seahawks run the football. Like they have two-headed monster that feels like they can actually be credible. Not as good as some of these other teams in terms of, I think, pound-for-pound talent. But then when they want to dice you up, Sam Darnold has done that. Eagles, the same thing, where it's like you have to respect Saquon Barkley, and if you don't, they can beat you over the top. When I look at all the other teams in the AFC right now, the closest thing to it is, to your point, the Colts. And then the other one, which I thought was the most impressive win of the weekend, is the New England Patriots and how they've gotten this good, this fast. And I'll start with this. Like, yes, there's a ton of Drake May conversation. There's like, is he in the MVP? All this different stuff. I can't help but look at them and think about how important coaching is and the job Mike Vrabel has done this quickly with that group and think, I can't believe this dude was out of football for an entire season. 2? Was it 2 seasons?
He was consulting for the Cleveland Browns, or he was a part of the Browns for a season. So it feels like it was 2 because this is in Brian Callahan's second season. So it would be 2. But yeah, it definitely makes you go back and look at the decision in general in Tennessee to get rid of Mike Vrabel. Like, did you just feel like things were stale? Did you just need to make change for change's sake? Yeah. It's one of the reasons why, bad ownership, bad organizations continually be bad, because they move on from people instead of, realizing the changes they need to make is maybe everywhere around the head coach, but not the head coach. That being said, I mean, look, I think when you look at how they've built this roster and they brought in pieces like, for example, Stephon Diggs,
Mhm.
not to bring him back up again, but a guy who has had a reputation of, at some point wearing out his welcome. It doesn't matter if it was in Minnesota or Buffalo, but Mike Vrabel seems to be the type of coach that can get to players. He can maximize, those guys' abilities and understand that, he can be a player's coach, but also a disciplinarian where he's not going to let stuff slide. And I feel like that locker room, the way they're constructing with Drake May, some of the draft picks, you look at Travion Henderson, the boost he gives their backfield, it's all working together. I mean, again, some credit needs to go to Josh McDaniels. He's been one of the best offensive minds in football for as long as he's called plays. It's not worked out when he's been a head coach, but as far as a coordinator, he's one of the best, one of the most respected. So that side of the football, it hasn't been surprising to me they've done as well as they have. To me, it's more about just, I guess, the rest of the division. And it looks like the Jets and Dolphins are falling back into this abyss or this space where they were during the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era in New England. And the Bills, I mean, again, we kind of talked about some of their issues offensively, but even defensively, looking at, what the stamp should be of that
Bad.
team and then what they looked like yesterday. And so it's like, here we are once again, the New England Patriots atop the AFC East, led by a quarterback who is the odds-on favorite to win the MVP. And they seem to be able to have the same formula they have in the past. And when I watch them, one of the things I think is this Patriots team doesn't beat themselves. As much as we want to give them credit for like all the things that they do, whether it's Drake May passing downfield or throws over 20 plus yards, or, again, defensively, how they've kind of come around. I still sit there and look at this team and say, like, they just play a winning brand of football where at times they're letting other teams beat themselves.
Well, you talk about identity, right? And it feels like they play to the identity of their head coach. They're tough. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They seem to be disciplined. And yesterday, I thought that was a schedule loss. I just went, okay, they've won 6 in a row. Now they got the Bucs coming off of a bye. Baker's offensive line is healthier. The Bucs opened that game up with a scoring drive where they go right up and down the field. Boom, they're in the end zone at 7-0. And from that point forward, it just felt like New England was in complete control of the game with a variety of different ways to beat you, including, again, like that pass rush, the way that they stuff the run. That feels like such a Mike Vrabel thing. Like, hey, that's not how you're going to beat us. You are not going to run on us. You're not going to have just these long drives where we're getting gashed. We'll concede the odd pass. We'll trust our playmakers in the secondary, but you're not beating us this way. That was the first time where I looked at them and said, man, in this AFC, like in the landscape of the weekend, I have to put them in the contender category. Like I have to put them in a group of teams that, all right, could I see them winning multiple games? Could I see them winning a road playoff game? Like, yeah, I can.
What I love about them is they will enter the playoffs being the team that probably no one wants to face because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Like they're that young, right? But you've got a head coach who's been there before and a head coach who's been able to help guide a team, the Titans, to an AFC championship when they probably didn't have much business being there in the first place. So he knows how to get teams to overachieve. And in a year where it feels like some of the contenders just have something missing, whether that be the Baltimore Ravens, the way we looked at them coming into the season, the Bills, as we've been talking about, or even the Chiefs at this point in time, just because that division's so darn tough, how good are they if they have to go on the road the entire time? I know they've done it in the past, but again, like you start kind of going through, for example, having to play in New England. If it ends up being the Patriots, having home field advantage in that scenario, and it ends up being inclement weather, we're talking about a team that can run the football, stop the run, play that gritty, tough physical style. You've got a Kansas City Chiefs team that's the last thing they want to do is run the football. They'd rather throw a shovel pass to Travis Kelse.
Yep.
So I kind of sit here and look at it and say, yeah, I could see this working out really very well for them. And again, they're that team that's scary because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know how hard it is to get there. They don't know how hard it is to win those games once you do get there. And that's oftentimes a scary thing in the NFL.
I just can't stand that it feels like they've figured out quarterback and coach this quickly.
Well, again, I think people need to give Josh McDaniels a lot more credit. Like I'm telling you, he's the type of coach where, the way he prepares his quarterbacks, the way he's able to dissect defenses and just his in-game play calling and adjustments. I'd put him up against anyone in the NFL.
Mm.
And that's why he's gotten multiple opportunities to become a head coach. It's why, despite how things did or didn't work when he was, rumored to be the Colts head coach, and then, obviously things didn't work out in Denver and things didn't work out in Las Vegas, I still think he'll get another opportunity. These organizations can be fickle at times, but when you keep looking at a track record of success, I think that's a window that we're walking into with New England. There'll be enough teams that want to say, I'll give him another chance. I think you look at the situations he entered into, and maybe it just wasn't the right time for him. Maybe they just didn't give him enough time to become the coach they thought he could be. But I'm a believer in Josh McDaniels. Like, I do think that eventually he'll get another shot at it, and it's going to be after a string of successful seasons with the combination of what they have right now in New England.
Yeah, I would guess that it would have to be a couple, just because everything you're saying is true, but it does seem like the personality fit as a head coach is difficult on some more, like the track record is lengthy enough now that I think if you're a team and you wanted to bring him into the building, you'd have to have a little bit more measure of certainty with what you had with your team. No?
Well, I think what mistake that a lot of the assistants that coached under Bill Belichick, and that was like the biggest piece of their resume, right? Forget the success. That's part of it as a coordinator, and then how you develop Tom Brady or how you call for plays like Tom Brady. The reality is, that team you're interviewing for doesn't have Tom Brady. So, that really doesn't matter to me. Nowadays you've got to be able to be a guy who's a leader of men. You've got to be able to be a guy who understands how to maximize the ability of the players you have. That is Mike Vrabel to a T. Yeah. And I think Mike Vrabel also is the type where, yes, he played under Bill Belichick, but he's his own man. So he could take those lessons, he could take those things he learned as a player, and then still kind of apply them to like his special sauce of how he is as a head coach and how he handles things. And hopefully that's the learning experience. Those are the things that Josh McDaniels is taking away from everything that they're doing right now in New England. And so that next opportunity he gets, it's not going to be the same playbook he's used in the past of following those exact footsteps of Bill Belichick. It'll be a combination of the Bill Belichick stuff. It'll be a combination of, coaching under Mike Vrabel, and then him just being himself, and him being a genuine coach who's going to come in there and coach these guys up and build those relationships that I think you have to have with players nowadays. Like, there's been a dramatic shift where that old school style of coaching doesn't really work quite as much anymore. You see it at the college football level. You see it at the professional level. And I think that's the thing about Mike Vrabel. Even though he can be a guy who holds guys accountable, he's a player's coach. Guys love playing for him. They respect him. And I think that's what you got to get back to. And that's where, when you look at some of these coaches who struggle to be able to get their teams to play consistently week in and week out, that's another piece of it, because they don't really have that relationship, that connection with their players.
That's honestly, man, I'm doing this from watching it on my couch. All right? Like, I get it. But there does seem to be this added value to the Vrabel / Dan Campbell types, where they're these huge, hulking, tough guys who say it like it is and seem to it doesn't always work, right? Like, there was like Mike Singletary, for example, in San Francisco. Like, no one would question how tough that guy is and how respected he is, big, larger than life human being. But it just, like, it didn't work out. He had more of like that unraveling quality, right? We saw it multiple times, like, can't do it, and pulling his pants down in the locker room. So I guess it can have a bit of a tipping point with the intensity. But when I watch Vrabel, I think the same thing with Campbell, where it's just, hey, this is a guy who's done it before, except for has like way higher pedigree than Dan Campbell does. You think like today he could go just about toe to toe with anybody in the locker room if push came to shove, but that there's like, also just the way that you see him interact with the players, you can tell like they huddle around him, that they respect him, they revere him, they want to hear what he has to say, they want to impress him. And like, to be able to get somebody like that, like a real culture setter who players respect and who does it the right way as well when it comes to hiring his staff and coaching an actual game, my God, I don't know if there's anything more valuable in football other than the quarterback.
Well, and I think to that point, like, I keep going back to this genuine connection. Players want to be viewed as people too. They don't want to be looked at as just an employee and a guy who, the second they leave the facility or the second they're done with the game, that the head coach isn't thinking about them. The head coach isn't, looking at his plan for the next week and saying like, hey man, we've had a couple tough weeks. Could be travel, it could be just the physicality of some of the games. We're pretty banged up. How am I going to adjust the practice schedule for my guys? Like, I've been there as a player. And again, I'm not even advocating that you have to have played to be able to do that and see that. But I think some of these coaches, they have so many things on their plate, they get too focused on the scheme of it, everything else, maybe the business of football too sometimes, and everything that they take on. And they forget about how meaningful it can be to talk to some of your star players or talk to some of your glue guys, your core special team players, even, maybe your kicker's struggling, having a side conversation connected with him. What's going on? Is it something off the field or whatever it is? That's still a real trait and a real thing. And I think when you look at, again, not to go back to Josh McDaniels and why it didn't work out, but when he got to Denver, he took on the same responsibilities as, essentially Bill Belichick did. That's really hard to do as your first time becoming a head coach. And you get so inundated with that stuff, you lose the connection to your players. When you lose connection to your players, you just start talking at them. You're not speaking to them and they're not listening. So it becomes an issue in that sense. But from all interactions I've ever had with him, Mike Vrabel's just one of those guys you want to sit down and have a beer with. And I think, again, I'm not saying every single head coach has to be that way. I think you got to do it your own way. But I think you could say the same thing about Dan Campbell. You think you could say the same thing about some of the other coaches too that figure out ways of getting their players to play for them.
I just think that there's clearly a value to that. Like there's clearly a value to somebody that you want to impress as a player and who treats you the right way.
But you know how this works. So we describe these head coaches as these big, masculine, testosterone-driven, former players, all stuff, and then we start looking for that copycat because it's a copycat league, and you miss the inherent traits that they exude, and instead you're just going to end up hiring a meathead, and then it's not going to work out. It's going to be a disaster, and it makes a bad name for everyone else. So that's my concern.
Yeah, you're trying to hire whoever is the funniest. You're like, okay, maybe give your buddy Shane Gillis a shot. let him coach a team. Let him coach a leader of men. Okay, is it too critical of me to say that yesterday was just a write-off game for the Steelers? It was like, okay, wide open AFC. I don't care. It's over. I don't think they have the weapons, and I think that the quarterback does not want to get hit. And that was those two things were fully on display yesterday.
So we haven't had a chance to talk in a while, but one of the stats that I was kind of looking at, because oftentimes you watch the tape and you come back and go, it seems to be something very familiar here, is at times where Pittsburgh's trying to push the ball downfield, there's almost a reluctance by Aaron Rodgers to hold on to the football long enough to allow anything to open. And he's immediately going to checkdowns, immediately going to the flat. And coming into this past week, and I would imagine even after this past game, he's still probably the fastest in the league for time to throw, meaning he's getting the ball out of his hands. Now, some people would say, well, that's because he's played for so long. He knows where he wants to go with the football, and he's not going to hold on to it. In fact, Tom Brady, back when he was finishing with the Tampa Bay Bucks, he was getting the ball out of his hand quick. He was very good at making sure he went to the right spot with the football, and he didn't hold on to it too long. Granted, older than where Aaron Rodgers is now, but still, it was effective. And they obviously won a Super Bowl. They were still in contention. This, and especially last night, it almost looked like he just didn't want to get hit. And, again, it's a tough thing to say to admit. Look, most quarterbacks are like, if I have to stand back to get hit all day, that's not necessarily something I want to sign up for. But that's what the job entails. And this entire season, it almost seems like he's been super concentrated and super concerned about, getting hit, even when his tackle jumps on him. And he berates him for doing that because he's, 41 years old. I get it. I'm similar in age. I don't know that I'd want a 300-pound plus guy jumping on my back either. But there's also an element of man, you're on the football field. Sure. You're a leader. You got to be able to make sure you can celebrate with those guys too. And it's not just ho-hum, another touchdown pass, ho-hum, another big play. They're looking for you to be that tough guy. And oftentimes it feels like, I'm not sure if it's from Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure if it's Arthur Smith, because they feel like if Rodgers isn't in there, they don't have any shot. So you're preserving him and him getting touched at all costs. But right now, I think it's costing them. And if you look at the odds-on favorite to win the AFC North right now, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, it's like at -2. It's like minus 290.
Yeah.
And they're still sitting behind them. So look, they have to play each other twice. But the way the Ravens are starting to trend and where the Steelers are at, I become concerned about an offense that has the capability of being able to throw the football downfield and make big plays, leaving a lot of stuff on the table right now. And it's in large part because Rodgers wants to get the ball out of his hand.
Yeah, I just thought that yesterday was the perfect just dichotomy between those two teams where Herbert was standing in the pocket, taking a bunch of hits and still making plays down the field. And yes, he's young and he's strong, and there's a huge difference between the way that the two guys can play at this point. But he's on his back a lot, but they're making a play down the field. And with Rodgers, it's like these rush throws, and even some of them, like there was a couple drops by Calvin Austin in this game and a couple of his wide receivers. But I'm going, yeah, you're throwing a missile at them like 1 second after the ball has snapped. I don't know if I don't actually know if that's something where you're supposed to be able to make a play on some of these balls, or how easy it is to make a play on some of these balls. And like, even, you mentioned being similar in age. I'm watching Matthew Stafford. He's getting up off the field time and time again. He's hanging out in the pocket. He's taking hits. He's still just holding on to the football and making plays down the field. Whereas I just don't see it with Rodgers. And I'm sorry, to the Vrabel point of like, hey, you have certain guys that make you feel good about yourself. Aaron Rodgers' face after every 3 and out or every sequence where they don't come through and the camera going to him and he is just muttering under his breath and he's staring daggers through guys' souls. I'm sorry if that's me, and I don't want to play scared with a quarterback. I don't want to feel like a guy hates my guts depending on whether or not I caught the ball or I didn't catch the ball, and the emotional volatility that comes with somebody like that. I'm sorry. I watched that game and I said there's just absolutely no shot. I do not see them winning a single playoff game. I don't even think I see them making the playoffs anymore.
Yeah, I think with the way their defense is taking a step back this season, that's my first concern. It's like that's always been the identity of this franchise. And unfortunately, they're one of the most highest paid defenses and they're just not playing up to that capability. The other thing for me in this team, and we just talked about the impact of the running backs, like yesterday I think Jalen Warren was averaging like 5 yards per attempt, somewhere in that ballpark. What do you like run for like 14 times?
Yeah.
It's like this has been a franchise that's been able to play defense, run the football, and that's how essentially they've been able to win Super Bowls. And they're now have a quarterback who is no doubt a first ballot Hall of Famer, and they made the trade to get DK Metcalf in there and all these other pieces that they've got. The truth of the matter though is it's still going to be built based off balance in the run game. And I keep going back to watching the mannerisms of Aaron Rodgers, and it almost feels like every time something goes wrong, it's not his fault. And look, he obviously is in that system. He's playing in it. But even if that's the case, I just feel like as a leader, you always have to point at yourself first. You have to hold yourself accountable, be responsible, and men will respect you for that, even if they know that it wasn't your fault, because you're taking the blame off of them. And I don't see enough of that. It feels like when there's a chance to air someone out, he's at times pretty critical of them or just telling it the truth and all that. When, again, this is a team that I think they're all waiting for him to be, hey, look at me. I'm the first one to tell you, like, I'm not playing good enough right now. I'm not playing up to my standards. And, that's got to change if we're going to have any chance of making a run once we get in the playoffs. So look, there's a lot of time left. So this team can still make those changes and do it. But, I think the lack of running the football consistently and then the way their defense is playing, it doesn't feel like a formula for success, even to win the division, which, by the way, I don't think anyone besides the division winner is going to make the playoffs from the AFC North. I think it's pretty safe to say.
Yeah, that's why I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to fall off a cliff, and I think it's going to be, steep. I know they've had the softer schedule. I know, like, I'm looking ahead to it. It's not crazy difficult, but I do not see it. And who would have thought that the personality mesh of DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers wouldn't work out in this day and age, that those two guys wouldn't be playing from behind and getting it out. Okay, a positive, because I've been doing a lot of the negative ones. My Seahawks.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this thing where I'm really excited by the way that they're playing. It's been a couple of tough opponents, or like easy opponents for them the last couple of weeks. But I'm watching Sam Darnold play and his connection with JSN in particular, and I'm going, all right, is this what Vikings fans were feeling last season? Or do you view Darnold in a different light this year than, say, you did a year ago with Minnesota, where it's just, so I can already tell from your face that it's like, no, until it's the playoffs, like he is a playoffs only matter for this guy kind of player.
No, I don't feel that way. I think I'm just kind of thinking through looking at Darnold last year, and there was always that caveat of, well, Kevin O'Connell's one of the best play callers in the league,
Yep.
and they've got Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best wide receiver in the league. So, it kind of feels like a lot of guys are going to excel in that position. Fast forward to this year, the story of the Seahawks coming into the season where it's like, oh, it's a rebuilding year. They got rid of, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett's no longer there. Can JSN carry the load by himself? And meanwhile, Tony Horton stepped up. They just went and traded for Shaheed. So they've got all this speed to take the top off. And Darnold has been phenomenal throwing the ball down the field. This past week, I think I was watching deep into like the second quarter. And at one point they showed up a stat. They're like, the last 2 games, 5 touchdown passes, only 4 incompletions, for Sam Darnold. Just to give it, context to how well he's playing. And you don't have necessarily the offensive guru or mind of Kevin O'Connell. So I kind of just go back and say, no, what he's doing this year is a stamp on him. It's a stamp for every quarterback that got drafted to a bad situation. And hopefully the league not giving up on these guys and realizing that with enough time, maturation, and then finding the right situation, they can excel. And this is one where you're seeing that with Sam Darnold. So they are the NFC version to me of like that scary live dog team. They've got some young pieces. They've got a really good defense. We talked about offensively the balance they can play with. I just feel like if they get in, they can make a run because that's a tough place to go play if they get the chance to host a playoff game, which it doesn't look like that because I think the Rams are going to win the division. But that being said, who knows where the Rams finish up? Maybe they're the number 1 overall seed. So maybe you do get them hosting one for, I guess it will be impossible in that case. But, looking at how things play out, who knows? Maybe they could end up sneaking up on the Rams at the end of the season. But I kind of just, I look at where Darnold's at and I say like, this is him, Baker Mayfield, and all these other quarterbacks you can kind of put in that category of hopefully the league doesn't give up on some of these guys because they're capable and talented. They just need to be in the right spot for it.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about the images of Darnold and Baker together on the Panthers as I was watching like Bryce Young just completely give that game away. It's the New Orleans Saints. You can't stop fumbling. You can't stop throwing interceptions. It's a crucial spot after they get a 4th down stop. And I'm like, whew, that's a tough look for you guys.
Especially after last week. You go from beating what is presumed to be one of the best teams in the NFC to then losing to arguably the worst.
Yeah.
And I get it, again, divisional opponent. There's a lot of familiarity there, but just that was as bad of a loss as it can get.
Yeah. Last one. If you had to pick one today, who's the offensive player of the year? JSN or your boy in Indianapolis?
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what he's doing right now, some of the runs too, JSN's been phenomenal. But what Jonathan Taylor is doing at this point, and I still go back and look at it's not like teams aren't still stacking the box. They're still putting an extra defender down there in the box, and he's done a hell of a job of making that guy miss or getting yards after contact. So to me, it's Jonathan Taylor. I think he's the engine right now that makes that Colts offense run, and it's evidence of that. I think when you see the games they have, that they have success in, the games they don't, but what he's doing. And how consistent he's been, but even looking at just pitching a little bit in the passing game too, he's evolved as a player, not just being a guy who's going to, step back and take the ball, 80 yards from, sitting behind center. Like he's a capable pass catcher as well in the backfield.
Yeah. I think it's going to be close between the two of them. Like, I think I agree with you even as a full blown homer. And I guess my case for JSN would just simply be, they added Shaheed this past week, but before that, it's like he's the entire focal point of that offense, and yet every game is over 100 yards. You go, I don't know how this is possible when you're staring down Cooper Kupp being in and out of the lineup, not clearly the same guy, and a rookie in Torrey Holton who, finally kind of just started to get it going these last couple of weeks, and yet it doesn't matter. He single-handedly has won them some games down the stretch with some of his route running, and just his catching the ball in traffic. It's absolute. I actually put him pretty high in terms of where you would rank him in wide receivers right now, already just based off of this 1 year.
Who's the last offensive player of the year to be a wide receiver?
I would guess.
I'm asking it because I don't know, and I think it's really hard for those guys to get it because typically a lot of the credit goes to the quarterback first.
I think Cooper Kupp Cooper Kupp got one when he was almost Triple Crown winner. So that was probably 4-ish years ago, but I think he's the last one to do it. Oh, Jefferson
And then
got it in
probably
22.
before him.
No, Jefferson got it in
Okay.
22. Yeah.
Jefferson did, okay.
Jefferson and I think Cup. So those would probably be the
Cup.
last two guys that got it. But anyway, I think he's tracking. I think it's going to be interesting. Hey man, it's great to have you back. Like it's great to have these
Yeah, good to be
conversations
back.
again, even though it means that the Blue Jays are done and my life is not nearly as
Hey,
fun.
by the way, hell of a run for the Blue Jays. That was as good of and I know it didn't end the way Blue Jays fans wanted it to, but that game 7, that series was phenomenal. So credit to the Blue Jays for getting there. Maybe they'll both be back there next year.
God,
We'll
I hope
see.
so. I need it because I need some
That
way
was
to
awesome.
get over that.
It was fun to watch, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like as cinematic for baseball as it gets.
It was amazing. Brady Quinn, again, our Monday Morning Insider and Fox Sports former NFL QB. Thanks, buddy. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Quick break, and then I'm going to come back. And speaking of like the Dodgers, I do have a thought on them. Subscribe to this podcast. Reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. We'll be back, and I want to discuss the Dodgers playing with fire. So this is old, but I want to get to it because I didn't have time last week. The Dodgers have been doing their victory lap on podcasts, late night television, whatever. I don't really care. You win, you get to celebrate. That's the way it goes. I don't begrudge them for talking trash. Like even the stuff I saw Rojas going at Drake, right? I'm like, who cares? I whatever. None of this really impacts me at all, other than I don't really like to see it because it's a reminder of what the Blue Jays could have had. And I'm sure the Jays would have talked some trash about the Dodgers too. They probably would have made like some payroll jokes or a joke at maybe even Shohei not coming there as expense or whatever. Who knows? Who knows how it would have gone? I don't think that the Dodgers have done anything that has been particularly egregious. I think Kike Hernandez is cringeworthy. I thought that him at the celebration was cringy, but outside of that, like it doesn't really bother me. That said, Kike Hernandez was on Mookie Betts' podcast. I forget the name of it. Maybe my producers can buzz me in the ear. But Mookie Betts has a pod, and they sat down after the World Series, and they chopped it up. And this really stuck out to me because the clip went viral. I wasn't listening to the show, so that's how I saw it. But it did make me think about potential implications for this team. So here's the quote. Kike Hernandez said, "We won a World Series, and we didn't even play good the whole playoffs." End quote. The pod, by the way, is called On Base with Mookie Betts. All I got to say to the Dodgers is be careful. I'm not rooting for a salary cap. Congrats to the people who are like, the Dodgers bought a World Series. The Jays tried to. The Jays absolutely tried to. One of the most exciting things right now in terms of helping you potentially get over that crushing loss is the idea that the Blue Jays made a ton of money on that postseason run, and they might sink a bunch of it back into the team. I don't think they're going to get Kyle Tucker, okay? I also didn't think the Raptors were going to get Kawhi Leonard, by the way. I was like very public record of saying that there was no shot. But I don't think that's happening. I'm really hoping that they return Bo Bichette and that they go maybe grab another good starting pitcher, a high-end reliever. I'm just not there in terms of them spending that kind of money on Kyle Tucker. I don't think it's going to happen. That being said, they're in these rumors because they spend money. Agents wanted out there the pressure to be on the Blue Jays because they also try to win championships. That being said, when the sentiment from the Dodgers is we won a World Series and we didn't even play good, as Kike Hernandez puts it, that's not the narrative that you want to have out there. Because I'll tell you right now, if they win again and they do it the way that they did it, and they go into this offseason and they're the team that gets Kyle Tucker, they get another stud from Japan. They add some nasty relief pitching. They add like a Suarez or a Diaz, and they don't really care about it. And they mow through the postseason next year. You're going to start to see, I think you're going to see a salary cap. Like the thing that these guys and these players, I bet you a lot of these guys don't care. I'm sure a guy like Mookie Betts, a steward of the game, cares. But these guys are just trying to win. It's their career, whatever. I have a tough time thinking that owners around the league are not going to embrace the narrative that is around the Dodgers if this continues to happen. And then their players are flaunting it in that way, saying, we didn't even play good and we won. Because that ruins a little bit of it. And I think the Blue Jays did outplay the Dodgers. I think that they were the better of the two teams. They were the hotter of the two teams. But yeah, the Dodgers did have all that talent to be able to squeak things out and get things done. And a lot of it was on the arm of one guy. I don't think that's the sentiment that you want out there. If you're the team that spends, you do not want the sentiment of, we don't even really need to be our best selves in order to win a championship. That's problematic for the league. Quick break. Back to the Leafs with James Mirtle. So yeah, it's awful. True pathetic fallacy with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the city of Toronto's weather right now. Just, it's dark. It's grim. It's cold. It's ugly. No one wants to be there. James Mirtle is a senior writer for The Athletic. He joins me every week, and he does so now. What's up, buddy?
You're from the Yukon. Isn't this like summertime right now?
No, I was a bad Yukon boy yesterday. I was supposed to run errands, and I saw the snow, and I went, no way. I'm not. I texted Bourne about it. He said, yeah, I'm not going out in Revenant weather. And I went, I agree. That's correct. I'm not doing the Revenant today.
The kids insisted we go bowling. I went bowling in that yesterday. So at least it was inside, but the process of getting there was like, what are we doing? It was like Revenant bowling.
Yeah, listen, people make fun of all the warm weather places that when they get snow, there's car accidents and people just refuse to go on the roads, right? Texas gets a little snow and people freak out. I don't think that Torontonians are all that different first snowfall. First snowfall every year, it comes almost as a shock where I go, how is this happening? What? Snow in Canada in November? How dare they? So I don't make fun. I don't want to tease the other places that actually should never, ever, ever get snow. Okay, let's just start with this, open-ended. How are you seeing this? Because we've had a lot of texts, and I would say that they've been pretty overwhelmingly negative. And there was this one little turning point where they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. They come back. They play their best period of hockey all season. And then they played, I thought, their best complete game of the season against the Mammoth. And only to turn around and have these last two games be, I think, as big of a magnifying glass on all of the problems that this team has. It's these. You just have to look at these two games.
Yeah, it's kind of like the emperor has no clothes. This is what they are. This is what they are. I mean, other than one period against Pittsburgh and getting a tired Utah team that was on the second game of a back-to-back. And this, I think this is what this Leafs team is. What are we, 16 games in now? 17 games in?
16.
This is what they are. And they're terrible defensively. They don't look anything like the team that won a lot of games last year, you know? And it's so bad that it's not any one thing. I know we're going to get into it. It's not Stolarz is worse. It's not that they're missing Tanev. It's not that they're missing, who up front. It's not that the new guys haven't been good. It's not that Austin. It's everything with this team right now. They're horrible.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is how I led my show today. Is if you're trying to put it down to one thing, if you're trying to pinpoint and go like it's Brandon Carlo, it's the goalies, it's it's Philippe Myers, right? It's not. It's all of it. It's the coaching. It's the systems. It's an all-encompassing issue with this team right now, top to bottom. The problem that I have is I don't even know where they begin. Like, I don't know one area of focus that they're supposed to have where I'm going to say, oh, okay, they're starting to really right the ship here.
Well, don't you think that sometimes when a hockey team's in this situation, it can get worse by trying to make it better, right? Like
Yeah, of course.
you can try and simplify. I mean, this happened with the Carlisle teams a lot where we're not playing well defensively. Let's try and play more defensive. And then you get worse offensively and you have fewer chances and you spend more time at your own end and it kind of snowballed on them a little bit. And you can see elements of that here. And the guys highlighted it last night on Leafs Talk really well. Philippe Myers gets the puck and he's just kind of slap-shotting it around the boards to nobody repeatedly. And it's like the breakout that was already bad is just getting worse. It's become desperation. It's becoming no hope plays to no one. And part of that is the way Carolina plays. And it's almost like the antithesis of what the Leafs need to play right now is a team that's so good at possession and so good at hemming you in and is so relentless. And the Leafs don't have an answer for a team like that. And it was kind of like when Florida was dominating them in the playoffs last year. That's what last night looked like. And you're right. I'm not really sure where you start. I guess the positives they have to build on is that they can score goals. William Nylander is playing fantastic. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the league. Even without the power play being very good, they've produced a ton of offense, which is strange.
Yep.
I think what you need to do is you need to rely on Stolarz less in goal. He's shown he can't play this much. He's already played 12 games. That should have never happened to this point. They should have went to Hildeby earlier. Hope you start to get better goaltending, continue to get the offense that you've been getting. And there's 2 building blocks right there. And then on the defensive side of the puck, just cut down the odd man rushes against. Don't worry about being perfect. Just worry about not being completely ridiculously giving gifts to the other team every night.
You think four breakaways in a period is too many?
It's too many. I mean, it's the numbers on the Boston game were brutal too, right?
Yeah.
I think it was rush chances were 8-0 against them in the first 40 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
And Boston's no great team this year, but they're playing like a team. The criticism of Boston coming into the year is look at their forward group. They've got one good forward line and then everybody else is a bunch of ham and eggers. And how are they going to get anything done? And they showed how. And Toronto should be able to out-talent a team like that, but it certainly doesn't look like it right now.
So the positives for Toronto, as far as I see them, are it looks like Nylander has taken even another step, which is insane considering how good he played last season, but he's been brilliant. That Tavares is stayed normal. I know that we've done this way too many times that it shouldn't even be a point of conversation, to be honest, which is when's it going to fall off? When's Tavares going to not be the same guy? He's the same guy. He's been great. Matthew Nyes is delivering on the contract every night. He's making impact plays. And Nick Robertson has acquitted himself extremely well in the top 6. And anybody that was a backer saying, hey, this guy just needs an opportunity over these last, what's it been, 8 games where he's been in the top 6, 7 games? That they look like geniuses because he genuinely looks like he's thriving with the opportunity. Outside of that, I genuinely do not know what you point to and say, well, this has been good. And that's concerning considering, the blue line is supposed to be, if you're talking about Maple Leafs team identity right now, clearly it is the top 4 guys, right? Or top 5 guys, however you want to put them. And with the offense, that's supposed to be completely plain as day. This is who they are. This is how they're going to score. They have as you just said it, out-talent you. If I was going to go with number 2, it was supposed to be, the goaltending and their ability to clear the front of the net and not just give up home plate opportunities. And rush chances, to your point, like that's been a disaster. To me, the eye test has been infinitely worse this season. And you watch the breakaways. Clearly the rush chances are awful, and that is a massive difference between last season and this one. But there is a discussion around, and I was talking about this with Bourne on Saturday. They weren't exactly an elite team defensively last year. They had way better goaltending. They had some of the best goaltending in the NHL, which bailed them out on a lot of nights. Like you think back to, say, the Edmonton game where Woes stood on his head and absolutely robbed them a hockey game in January of last season. They haven't had one of those this year. They haven't had and you thought maybe Hildeby was going to maybe deliver them one yesterday when he was making save after save after save. But how different is this numerically when it comes to the way that they're defending in their own zone to what they even did a year ago?
Yeah, you gave me some homework on this, so I looked it up. You're right. I mean, what I see in the numbers is I'm just looking at even strength. What I see is that in terms of giving up shot attempts and spending a lot of time in their own zone, it looks similar numerically to last year. The difference is a lot more of those shot attempts are hitting the net. So it's fewer blocked shots, it's fewer missed shots. Basically, you're giving better opportunities with those shot attempts, and so instead of what they were doing last year was packing the front of the house, and teams were trying to get through, and pucks just weren't getting through to the same level at even strength. And the other thing I see is that on the high danger side, they weren't amazing. They weren't one of the most elite teams in the league, but I have them 14th in high danger chances against even strength last year. Now they're down closer to 20th. So that has fallen, but I think that this blame pie or whatever we want to call it, Stolarz has a piece of it. The goaltending has not been anywhere near as you look at goals saved above expected. He's bottom 5, bottom 6 among regular starters in the league. So they haven't gotten the kind of goaltending. And then if you look at last year, the combination of Woll and Stolarz, if you throw out the games that Matt Murray played and, some of the extra games that were the Hildeby games last year, those two guys had a .916 combined save percentage, which was the best tandem in the league for two goalies for a team. And they haven't had anything close to that this year. You include the .939 that Primo gave them, and goaltending wise, the Leafs are probably bottom 5, bottom 7 in the league. So you combine that with the more rush chances against, more high danger chances against, more of those shot attempts hitting the net than they did last year, and it's a bad situation. It's a bad pie, is what it is.
It's a horrible pie. I think we should also acknowledge in this that, okay, who would you say were the Leafs' 2 best defensive players last year?
Tanev, number 1.
Yep.
And Marner up
yes,
front. I mean,
that's the answer that I was looking for, and I think it's a little foolish to think, hey, you were going to remove both of these guys and be as good defensively. I just don't think that Chris Tanev coming back, and they've had games with him, but that he is suddenly going to be the cure-all to all of the defensive woes. Like, he's only going to play 20 minutes a night, and the rest of it, sure, there's a huge gap between Chris Tanev and Philippe Myers. I do think that he will play much, 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 much better when he returns, but we talked about it last week. You got to be overly cautious with Chris Tanev now. You cannot be rushing him back in any shape or form. You actually have to be doing the opposite, where you're making 110% sure that he is ready to go. And I think that nobody knows what's happening with Joseph Woll, and he's asked for his privacy to continue. I think that the media and frankly the fan base has done quite a good job at not pushing that storyline. But I think you kind of want to be similar with that as well, which is let him come back when he is fully comfortable and he is 100% ready to go with the Maple Leafs. Like, he's got his feet underneath him. I just don't think that bringing those two guys back at some point is all of a sudden going to be, hey, don't worry, everything's fine.
No, and when they had Tanev, Tanev played the majority of the games this year. He was struggling, and so that's why the part of the blame pie, if we keep using my terrible analogy, part of the blame pie has to go on the coaching staff as well. I mean, it's because there's something systemic that's happening here to players who were good last year who don't look good this year. A lot of the roster is very similar to last season. I mean, we can talk about Marner all we want, and I'm sure if they continue to spiral, that's going to become the overriding narrative that they lost one great player and all of a sudden they're bad. But I don't think that that's really the full story of this team. The full story is that they've gotten bad in so many different ways. Guys that made saves last year can't make saves. Players that were defending well last year aren't defending well. Austin Matthews still doesn't look the way you want him to look as a $13 million player. And the 3 new forwards that they brought in have been at best okay. Probably less. They've been mediocre is what I would say.
I would say lower.
Yeah.
That's
fair.
Mediocre would be a good step up for those guys. Like, honest to God. So Michelli's produced some points and he's had some beautiful moments, but overall the body of work has not been anywhere close to encouraging. And I think that if you were pointing at guys that if they were to make the playoffs, I would say, hey, who's likely to not be on it? He would be pretty high on the list for me. Dakota Joshua, night in, night out, he is my Office Space. What is it that you say you do here, guy? Where I just don't know, like, how are you impacting the game consistently? There's some flashes, but overall it's very little. And I think Nick Waugh has really benefited from, trust me, he's good defensively, even though Like he's got the lowest expected goals for of any of the forwards on the team right now. So I'm not, you know me, I'm not Mr. Analytic, but I'm not watching Nick Waugh every night going like, wow, what a brilliant player. What a huge coup it was getting this guy. No, I don't think any of the pieces work. Frankly, though, to me, the biggest issue in terms of the roster construction, and I don't want to lose the point about the coaching because I think that they bear a lot of responsibility with this as well. Like you have to me, when a great head coach adjusts to the personnel that he has, right? And I don't think that that's what they're doing right now. But the thing that I'm going to hyperfixate on here is you needed to have at least one stable pairing on your blue line, losing Chris Tanev. And the roster gambit with this team when it came to those pairings was, hey, if you remember a year ago, they've got better depth than ever at this position. You can realistically say now after the Carlo trade that there is real balance with the pairings. You remove some of that losing Chris Tanev. You made the point that he was struggling already. But I think one of the biggest concerns for the long term of this is that you traded significant assets to get a piece that was supposed to make Morgan Rielly feel like a star again. That was supposed to make that pairing an advantage for you every single night. And Carlo and Rielly have not worked. And I've seen some numbers where Rielly has played better absent of Carlo, which I think is like fairly concerning. I don't know if people thought they were getting prime Chris Pronger from Brendan Carlo. That was never the idea for me. But I also look at him and say, man, he is struggling outside of blocking shots for this team. Again, not really sure what kind of a positive impact he's having on this team. But if you can't get something from those two guys together or even apart, I think you're screwed.
I think there's buyer's remorse for the Leafs with Carlo.
Well, there has to be.
in the organization. Yeah. And it's telling that when they were looking at trading for a top line winger, they were looking at moving him. And in hindsight, they were looking at moving Carlo in a deal for Peterka with Buffalo. And he would have been the Kessel ring piece that Buffalo ended up getting, the big right shot defenseman. And in hindsight, that would have worked out pretty well. Because I think the problem with Carlo is that not only is the fit with Rielly it hasn't been, even what we saw last year hasn't been that, but he's also just another big guy that struggles with the puck, and without Tanev and with Myers in there, all of a sudden you've got Benoit, you've got Myers, you've got even McCabe, you don't have enough puck movers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they need to do, and I know you've been pushing for this, is get Myers out of the lineup. You've got someone like Henry Thrun who's played a lot of NHL games down with the Marlies, and he's put up a lot of points down there. Change the composition of your D and get someone who can move the puck.
Yeah.
And he's not amazing defensively either, but you've got to try something else. Philippe Myers is a guy who spent a lot of time in the minors for a reason. 2 years ago, he was in the Tampa organization. He played mostly in the AHL. He's been through waivers a bunch of times in his career. He's not an everyday kind of player.
No.
And it was a bit confusing when they gave him I think they gave him a 3-year contract, right? It was a bit confusing, the commitment they made to him. But I think it was all in because of this push to build what I call the tree fence, the tree living defense of just all these big, tall, immobile guys. But, I watch games around the league right now, and it's Celebrini and Carlson in Anaheim. And you look at the young, active, mobile D on a lot of these teams, and it doesn't look like what the Leafs are trying to do. And I know they're trying to build for the playoffs, but the way they're playing right now, they might not make the playoffs.
Yeah, you got to get there. And I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying in terms of I like them being a heavier team. And I think a lot of people do, especially after the way that the group was built around Kyle Dubas for a lot of the years and some of the issues that they had time and time again in the playoffs, which was they couldn't clear the front of the net and they got killed by the Bruins on the cycle where they couldn't win a puck battle. And there seemed to be a little bit of an overcorrection when we're looking at it right now. If you're going to get a big guy, I want the big guy to be nasty. I want the big guy to be mean. I want to have him feel like, hey, he might do something stupid every once in a while in the right way. And I think they got that in McCabe, right? McCabe has a real mean streak to him. If you have your head down on the open ice, he's going to make you pay for it. I think largely he will stick up for a teammate. There's a lot of good there. But Carlo, it isn't that. You're getting the worst of essentially all worlds. He's big. He blocks shots. That's nice. Outside of that, Do you feel like he's going to go into the corner with somebody and really rough them up? Do you feel like he's an intimidating factor in front of the net to clear it out? Do you feel like he can move the puck? Do you feel like he's good in transition, that he's got great gap control, that he's going to be able to shut somebody down in open space? I don't. It's troubling. It's deeply, deeply troubling. And the Myers thing, to your point, is like it's a build off of that, where you're doubling down on these types of guys that just because they're big, you're putting them on your roster when they really don't have a skill set that looks anywhere near NHL level. Like, have one thing that you do that makes you look like an NHLer outside of your size.
Well, and I think the best blue lines in the league right now are kind of a blend of different skill sets, right? And I mean, it's always been talked about. You want pairings that complement each other. That's the whole idea with O'Reilly and Carlo. But part of the problem the Leafs have right now is they've got one real puck mover. It's Morgan Rielly, who's 31 years old, and he doesn't skate the way that he used to. And he's not the same player that he was 5 years ago. And if that's your only puck mover that you're leaning on, that's a problem. It's a part of the reason why they're not breaking out cleanly, and part of the reason they're not moving up the ice well, and part of the reason the power play has struggled. And there's a lot of things there. And, instead of Carlo, they probably needed to bring in another puck mover. And I know that that's something that the Leafs organization talked about in the offseason too, is that they'd like to get another puck mover on the back end, but it was a need they didn't address because they were so worried about what was happening up front. And it's left them in a really tough spot right now, because I don't know that you're going to be able to acquire a top 4D right now.
Buddy, that right now, when you're looking at the roster, it's, hey, they could really use another top 6 forward. Maybe Robertson cures some of that. Hey, they could really use better center depth. Hey, they could use how many defensemen? Like, it's multiple at this point. They've got nothing in the cupboards whatsoever. The idea that they're going to be able to overhaul this from a roster standpoint through the trade market is nuts to me. They don't have anything of significant value to give up, nor are there teams out there that are saying, oh, yeah, we've got a great right shot, puck-moving defenseman. We're willing to move this guy. Like, trust us. Look what you paid to get Carlo. Like,
yeah.
Brandon Carlo cost you one of your top 3 prospects and a first-round pick, and I believe a 4th as well, as if it wasn't like insult to injury to add a little bit. Yeah. Hey, just throw a little dash of a tiny bit extra on top of this. They don't have the means to correct this through trade. Everything I guess that's kind of like the theme of the show today, is everything that they need to find in terms of solutions. It's got to be internal or bust. And when I look at the internal solutions and what could get better, I don't see it at just about every single level. And that's the depressing part. That's the part that has me down. That's the part that makes this not feel like an overreaction just because we're 16 games in.
So you're saying it's hopeless?
I will say that I just don't know how you're supposed to be excited or optimistic. I think that if you're doing that, it's at the expense of being rational.
The only reason for optimism is how good the offense looks, and how well Tavares is playing, and how well Nylander's playing, and Nyes, and like, they look like a dangerous team that can score goals. Mm-hmm. So they need to get the goaltending figured out, and they need to get the defensive play figured out. But you're right, there's a lot wrong right now, and they're going to have to get on a heater and, I think, gain some confidence. But again, I think that sitting some of the players who are struggling, like Myers, and changing up who's getting the minutes, and putting a lot of the onus is on the coaching staff as well. They need to adapt. They need to get the power play going, and the power play's shown a little bit of life lately, in part thanks to leaning on power play 2 a little bit more.
Yep.
But I think Berube's got to start pushing some different buttons here.
Yeah, I don't know what those buttons are. Like, when I'm watching these guys play, and his quote yesterday was, I have it here. It was, we don't value the defensive side of the puck enough. And I'm like, all right, but to your point about overcorrecting and changing what it's supposed to look like philosophically, I don't know how not valuing the puck defensively is going to cure the idea that this team doesn't have a defenseman who can break the puck out, and this doesn't have a guy who looks overly comfortable when the puck is on his stick on the back end to do anything with it other than throw a grenade up the side of the boards. Like, that's seemingly the strategy, is just whip it out. Just go. Just whip the puck up the side of the boards and hope that it finds somebody. Hope it finds a forward that's supporting it that can chip it out, or someone else that can carry it in the forward group through the neutral zone. Like, you can try to change the strategy all you want. I think that the personnel is really, really difficult. It's hard to win when you have this back end, and you have a forward group that, quite frankly, has a lot of guys that I don't think are ever going to have that kind of commitment defensively or even some of that ability. So when it comes to like shaking up the roster, the one move that's worked is Nick Robertson. And I touched on it earlier. But how much are you buying of this? Because it is kind of getting to the point for me where, and I've texted with some people about it, that I'm like, no, I need to see a full season. I need to see what he looks like in the postseason. But man, it's hard to ignore the way that he's looked and how important he's actually been to the goal scoring that you're talking about.
That line's been really fun to watch, and it seems
Yeah.
like they have some chemistry. Like you look at the goal that Tavares ends up getting with, for whatever reason, it seems like it works with those three. And we talked so much in the offseason about Matthews being the guy that could elevate a line, and now it turns out Tavares is, he's playing with one
He's
guy
doing
making
it.
1.8, and McMahon's a guy who was in the ECHL 3 years ago, who's making 1.3, and Tavares is elevating those two, and they look like they like playing together. It's kind of like a line that works just really in straight lines, right? Like that's the way that Robertson plays and Tavares plays and McMahon plays. And I thought that goal was a perfect example where they just go straight at the net, throw on a rebound, causes some chaos. McMahon makes a really nice pass over to Tavares, and they score a goal. And it's going to look different than the other line because it should look different. It's, try and do the math in my head here. It's like a $7.5 million line, not a $30 million line or whatever the Matthews line is right now. And they're getting it done, and they've proven a handful for the other team. So that looks more, I guess, like a Berube line. I guess that's what he's looking for, is something more like that. It's funny that Robertson would be one of the members of a Berube line, but and I think you get them some sheltered minutes and you give them some offensive zone starts, and it looks pretty good. So, but for me, full marks to Tavares though. I mean, he's the reason why that works. And it's just amazing. It's almost like you were talking about a fall off. It's almost like he's gotten better. I mean, He looks like a better player than he was 2 years ago. And I think it was really motivating for him. You lose the captaincy and you get the new contract and you commit to staying here, and you don't have the playoff success. And it's just been fuel for him that he's dug in on and used. Mm-hmm. But I guess the unfortunate part is you're getting that season from Tavares. You're getting this season from Nylander, where he's one of the top scoring players in the league. Look at all Nyes has something like almost an assist a game.
I think you have to throw Nyes in that conversation. Like
they've all, and Robertson's been way better than we expected. The disappointing thing is you're getting those performances, and they're being wasted on a team that's in whatever they are, 20th, 21st place today.
Well, yeah, it's hard to be excited about their offensive contributions. Like what? I think that they're third in the league in goals for right now. But it's difficult to be enthusiastic about that when you have a period against the Carolina Hurricanes where you get outshot 22-2 and you have a rookie goaltender in net that you should have, like, if there was ever a game where you thought, hey, they're going to dig in defensively, it's on a back-to-back in front of a kid who you don't want to have get sewered. They totally sewered him. They crushed him. Okay, so last two things for me is just, do you have updates on things? Are you with me in terms of, listen, obviously they're going to shelter Wool, but and we don't have like a ton of information there, and it's kind of hard to even ask about it. But like now he is playing for the Marlies. Do you expect this to be like a quicker ramp up, or like do you have any feel for this situation whatsoever?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be down there that long. They played him about half the game there on the weekend on the road. Maybe he gets another half start with the Marlies. Maybe not. The Leafs aren't on the ice today, so we'll see tomorrow what that looks like in Boston. If he's with the team, if he's skating with them, or if he waits till they get back from the trip. I assume with the way Hildeby played that they might feel like they've got a little bit more runway with Wool. But I suspect that you see Joseph Wool start a game, let's say within 10 days would be my guess. Okay.
And then last one, Scott Laughton.
No, there's no update there. Yeah. So I think it's similar to the Tanev situation, right?
Yeah.
Other than it was only one blow to the head instead of two.
Yeah. It's weird that he feels this important, but he does. And also, if you're talking about being a more responsible hockey team from a 200-foot standpoint, having him play down the middle is supposed to, and like having him feel comfortable in that role, having him on the penalty kill, he's important. Like, Yeah, same thing in terms of looking back on the trade and feeling from the fan base that there's the buyer's remorse that you mentioned with the Carlo deal. But if you're trying to find some measure of balance and consistency with your lineup and you look at the defensive issues as a holistic problem and not simply, hey, it's Philippe Myers, then getting him back and having him on the roster is going to be important for this team. Because and this is part of the other thing is like with him, the fourth line looked kind of credible. And I thought, hey, finally you're kind of getting something out of Domi. Without him, I'm actually looking at Domi and saying maybe he ends up actually sitting a game.
Well, that line I thought last night was like they're on the ice and it's like, well, here's like just the leftover guys like
Yeah.
Yarncroc, Blais, and Domi. Like,
Yeah.
what is this line?
Nothing.
What are they trying to do? Yeah.
No, you know what they're trying to do? Play 8 minutes and get away with it.
Right. Carolina, their fourth line, they got Taylor Hall out there and he played fantastic and scored a big goal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the forward depth that they've got just isn't anywhere close to what Toronto's rolling out right now.
Mm-hmm. James Mirtle, again, you can read all of his stuff at The Athletic. Thanks for making time, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Shitty.
See you, man. I really do hope that we end up in a situation where people are clipping me panicking and go like, you gave up on them 16 games in. Sure. Happy to be wrong. I do a post-game show, podcast award-nominated post-game show, where like I got to watch this team throughout the entirety of the season. I got to talk about them. I don't have the luxury of saying, nope, no thanks. What's the next Game of Thrones spinoff that they're going to make? I'll just get super into that. Like it's not happening. I'm in it. So I want to be wrong. I really want to be wrong. But as of right now, the way I see it is coaching staff not doing enough, general manager that was not aggressive enough with a roster, or creative enough with a roster. Goaltending, I'm optimistic about. I think it will get back to a good place. Once they get Wool back and they get in a rhythm of what they were doing last year, which is riding the hot hand a little bit more, but not anybody into the ground, there's a real formula for success there. Blue line, who's moving the puck? And how is that going to change? That I don't really see improving. And okay, even if you get Chris Tanev back, you're going to suffer other injuries and you're going to have to lean on this depth. And I don't really see the depth. And yeah, I'll say this too. I think Matthews is getting, it's been a little unfair, and from me included. Like, he's playing fine. He's playing well. I think he's still first on the team in expected goals for as an individual, which, again, take that for what it's worth. I'm watching the same games as you. I don't find it to be dominant performances by him. I think that Nylander has been better. I think that him having to have Nylander and Nyes on his line is a little problematic. He hasn't scored goals in the same way, even though he's got a bunch of them this year. But you want to feel like he can take over games and that he feels like, yeah, a real presence offensively. And that hasn't quite been the case. But he's been good. I don't think that, like, he's as big of a problem as it's being made out to be, especially at this point of the season. But still, he's leaving you feeling like you want something a little bit more. And I think that's completely fair, given that he's one of the highest paid players in all of the sport. So you're measured against your contract. It is what it is. If he was making $8 million, we wouldn't be having these conversations. But there are just so many problems. And I'm having a really tough time looking at it and saying, don't worry. Like, again, outside of the goaltending, don't worry, this will normalize. Anyway, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple or on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up or leave a comment. You can reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. Quick break, and then I'll talk to Armin about what we missed. All right, before we do what we missed, I'm giving away tickets. AC/DC is bringing their Power Up Tour to Rogers Stadium on September 16th, 2026, and we've got your chance to be there. We're giving away 3 pairs of tickets to the show, to this legendary night of rock and roll. Just text the code word HIGHWAY to 590-590 for your chance to win. If you don't win with us, tickets are now on sale at Ticketmaster. This contest is Ontario only. Standard message and data rates may apply. Again, the code word is HIGHWAY. All right, Armin, Zargs. What
Bunks.
did we miss?
Jason Kelse apologized to all of Canada. I'm reading his tweet now.
What first of all, set it up in terms of what he said to piss off Canada for people.
Yeah, he was like, are we really caring about this World Series? Why do I care about a team from Canada?
Yeah, that was it. It was, why do I care about a team from Canada?
Yeah, that was his main thing that hurt. And then he sent out a tweet saying, guys, I love Canada. I have been bamboozled by our social team.
Okay.
Blaming the social team that failed to show
gutless.
the whole story. How could I not love poutine, maple syrup, and beavers? Huge eye roll. I was actually rooting for the Blue Jays in a World Series that I didn't care about. Seriously, Canada is the best. Yada, yada, yada. That's it. I am a known Canada advocate and ice hockey lover.
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, horrific apology. Like, I love beavers, and I get
stereotype.
No, I get that he's trying to be funny, but it's not. Like, it's not funny. And for somebody who I do think has a real, genuine, funny side, that's just lame. It's a lame apology. So what he said was dorky. The whole why do I care about a team from Canada? But like, he does a podcast and he's ranting about his own personal belief of the World Series, which that's just his perspective. So I don't really care. I'll say this. I don't think that he has anything to apologize for, and that it's a lame quote, okay? And this was my fear from the very outset. I've spoken to you guys about this. I'm a big Jason Kelse guy. I was a big Jason Kelse guy. I loved him when he was not overexposed. And that this is always the way that it goes. Somebody's popular, somebody's like, not everybody's Charles Barkley, man. Not everybody, even Shaquille O'Neal, who to me has gotten a lot better, even though there still is the whole nobody could have played in my day thing with Shaq, which drives me crazy, which I go, man, this is legitimately what this is not a good look, dude. Guys could play in your era. I've watched basketball. I'm not Shaq. I don't have, what is it, G5 status? It's like G5
Dr.
classification.
Shaquille O'Neal too.
Yes, 100%. But if you recall, Shaq was really rough out of the gates on TNT, and he's gotten a lot better. And maybe Kelse finds his level a little bit. It's a lot to be on the desk of ESPN and doing a super popular podcast and trying to be funny all the time and doing these skits. It's a lot. So I'm a little forgiving of that as a media person. What I actually think is the lamest thing in all of this is Canadians. We're such
Catching
crybabies.
feelings, yeah.
We're such crybabies with this stuff, man. Like, we got to get over it. For the love of God, how often do you hear a Canadian do the whole thing where they're like, I'm not American. America sucks. Here's my thoughts on their politics. Here's my thoughts on anything. Every Canadian is so comfortable to opine about America. And yet, if it ever comes back our way, it's, hey, did you hear what Jason Kelse said about Canada? Why didn't Prince Harry wear the hat of the Blue Jays? He's supposed to be Canadian. Shut up. Stop crying all the time. We're supposed to be tough. Our country is supposed to be rock solid nails, people who endure the climate, an immigrant nation who went up to the tundra and got it done. And yet anytime somebody says even the like smallest little thing about Canada who isn't from here, and it's meltdown city, and it's like a guy has to publicly apologize. It happens with our sports teams all the time. The Raptors fans, Blue Jays fans, not as much Leafs because hockey is really Canada's sport, and so it doesn't happen the same way where we look at ESPN and go like, they don't have the Canadian team on the power poll. But
the Raptors ones, Bunk, are really bad.
We gotta stop it. We gotta stop it. We gotta stop being such little piss babies. We are such babies when it comes to criticism from Americans. And like, we do it so hard to them. So I saw, for example, the Nashville Predators put out some post where it was, I don't know who it was, player getting his skate blade changed.
I think it was Ryan O'Reilly, actually.
Yeah, maybe it was. Who cares? It's not the point. It was just, gets a skate blade change, and their admin puts something up like, hey, touching a razor sharp, but who cares? Essentially did not know that, like, how a skate blade is on a hand when you're changing a blade.
Right.
And so many Canadians have started being like, classic Nashville doesn't know anything about hockey. You think that Nashville right now, that people there are having a big piss and a cry about how they don't get respect for their hockey? No, because they don't care. And we're such little brother, little sister syndrome whenever an American says something about Canada. Well, don't say that about us. Why wouldn't you care about Canada? He doesn't care about Canada. Who cares? He's a former football player for the Philadelphia Eagles. Who cares? Anyways, next.
So the Hall of Fame ceremony before the
Yeah.
Leafs game yesterday, I was
Yeah, you
there.
were there.
Yeah, I was there doing the Leafs radio broadcast with Joe and Jim Ralph. And with the introductions, I was kind of expecting like Chara to get some booze. I don't know. I get that we're celebrating him, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's Chara, and
So
this
what?
is Toronto.
That's still such. That's.
Did you
baby.
not expect booze?
No.
No, that's not a thing.
It's his Hall of Fame induction.
I know, but still a little
And
murmuring maybe of booze would have been just like it just would have felt more like, I don't know, passionate.
I will say this. There's something to be said for it in terms of a hardcore fan base. Like, I think Chara has the temperament where he would take that in stride and give a little smile and a wave. And it wouldn't be that wouldn't be something where you would get a tweet of people being like Bruins fans going classless.
No.
Whereas if you wanted to boo, you could go ahead and boo. What I will say is that that crowd. It's a library. It's a lot of suits. It's very corporate. It's very sanitized. It's not a basement in Mimico type of crowd.
Yeah.
So I don't expect Chara to get booed. And I do think that for me personally, I wouldn't have booed him because I respected him as a player. I couldn't stand the Leafs playing against him. He drove me nuts. I thought he got away with 1 million calls. He embarrassed Brian McCabe to a degree that makes it almost the most memorable thing from his career. But I don't know. I think that there is reverence for the way that he played the game and also the human being he is. If you go even another layer down, which is like he's a charitable guy who gives a crap.
Yeah.
I get anyway, all I'm saying is like there's a cauldron of not booing. But if you wanted to boo, you could have, and I definitely wouldn't have felt some kind of way about it and said, that's a bad look for us. I would have said, that's actually a good, passionate look for us. I think that I don't care how the Leafs crowd gets louder, okay? I don't care if it's booing or if it's cheering, but having some kind of energy in there would be great.
Yeah. Really the only pop yesterday was Sundin. Obviously, there's a lot of goals and stuff, but for the pregame ceremony, it was Matt's, obviously.
Yeah. As there should be. He should be celebrated like a...
McGinley, were you I don't know how it came across on the TV, but it was really
Well, he's
muted.
not there.
I know he wasn't there, but I don't know. It was like...
He wasn't there.
It was a golf club.
But you don't see him.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like you have to be loud for him. Buddy.
They're showing like the Leafs memories a bit and stuff.
Do you think... this isn't a question for you. You're too young. I'm asking this. I'm looking at the screen right now to the YouTube audience. If you are a Leaf fan, do you think Alex McGillney was watching that game and that pregame ceremony? No. So I don't think about it. I'm so glad he got in. He deserved to be in for a really long time. I had gotten into so many different arguments with people about this. He deserved it. I'm happy. I loved watching him. He is definitely a signature player in my lifetime, not just with the Leafs, but in the league in general. He obviously has a past that is more important to the game of hockey than I think gets recognized in terms of the way that he defected. And especially when when I read Matt Sundin's book, being reminded of just like how scary it was for McGillney to do that and how courageous it was. But yeah, I don't read much into, again, the library not making noise for a player that isn't there and probably isn't watching.
Okay, let's move on to Raps. Brandon Ingram went a bit viral this weekend. He was sulky, went to the bench, slammed his water bottle against the court, smacked who I think was, equipment manager, staff on the team.
Looked like someone with like, it's not an equipment manager, but like a team employee.
A team employee.
A stadium employee.
Water like splashed on Scotty.
Yeah.
I was watching it at a bar and I was like, where did that water come from? I was so confused. But anyways, when they showed that back, I was surprised. Ingram didn't really offer an apology or anything. And obviously people got on him a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there any positive you take away?
No.
Do you think it's a big deal in any sense?
I don't think it's a big deal. I'm definitely like, I wouldn't have, if you didn't put in what we missed, I wouldn't have said this has to be in here today.
Yeah.
right? Like this was not a story that I'm not leading with it. I didn't have a guest to talk about Brandon Ingram throwing a water
Blake,
bottle.
where are you?
I think largely it's a nothing. What I will say is that it's not a good look.
Not for the newest player on the team.
There's no positive. So here's the thing.
Well, the positive spin is just that you're a competitive
Yeah.
guy.
Guess what? You know where I want to see that?
On the
When you're
court.
playing basketball.
Defensive end would be nice.
Yeah, I want to see you be a competitor when you're on the floor and holding your teammates accountable and being a leader and whatever.
Maybe that's partially the
no,
take that
but
no one spoke up to him. Like you splashed it on the best player on the team. It would just be weird.
I don't care about Scotty Barnes getting splashed because that's whatever. I just think it's a human being thing that if you throw something in anger and it hits somebody in the face, which the water bottle did, to acknowledge that person and say, oh, my bad, instead of just look forward and do and say nothing. That's the look. I don't care that he splashed the water. I don't care that he made a mess. I don't care that it got a little bit of his teammate. The water bottle hit somebody in the face, and then they had to clean up, and the game is delayed. It's just not what you want. It's just not what you want. It's not a big deal. I do not care about it. I don't think it's like an indictment of Brandon Ingram as a human being. No. There's no larger point to any of this. I just think that it's a bad look. It doesn't look good. And especially this is the era of social media, right? Where there's no Brandon Ingram highlight from this season that has been as big as that. So
no,
for a lot of people, that's the Brandon Ingram highlight. And if you're him, I wouldn't want to. You get one, okay? You get one of those. But if he has a Rosenthal moment where he shoves a reporter and stares him down, you're going to think he's a jerk.
The dichotomy, too, is that Jamal Shed is most known for a general basketball fan for cleaning up water bottles when he was part of the Houston Cougars.
Yeah.
They were stepping off
he's the man.
the court, and his teammate kicked a bunch of bottles down, and he went and picked them up.
Yeah,
and he's viral for that moment. So
Shohei and Yamamoto thing where they clean up the dugout after.
Very much so. So it was just kind of funny that they're on the same team.
All right, we got anything else?
We could do Jesse Marsch quick. We could sneak it in. Jesse Marsch thinks Canada and the World Cup will be bigger than the Blue Jays going to the World Series. What do you think? Quick thoughts?
That's stupid as hell. I mean, it's definitely.
Let's say they make it past like group stage.
Yeah, it doesn't. No. Okay, if he means globally, obviously.
No, just Canada. In Canada. I think he said
that's what
in
he
Canada.
meant. I love you, Jesse. I love the passion. I got nothing bad to say about Jesse Marsch. He has been amazing. Not just for the program, but the way that he represents our country. And I think that there's a piece in there that he talked about that I totally agree with, which is like the way the Blue Jays play is the way that Canada soccer plays. There's symmetry in terms of the personalities, the care, the likability, all of that.
Committee. Yeah.
This country wants we're North American. You want to win. It's going to be, yeah, hell yeah, boys. They win a game. They beat a good country, but they can't win the World Cup. And so, no, the investment, it won't be the same way. So, no, it won't be as big as the Blue Jays, period. Nice try, though. We'll see you tomorrow.